Okay, so let's continue from where we left off yesterday. Uh, right, I believe to do question D, if I'm not mistaken. Right, so question D here is asking us from paragraph 3, give two things that the writer did to guard against the effects of the wind. Now keep in mind, if they're asking over here, they've given you bullet points in front of the lines, right? So they've kind of made it clear which point you have to write where, right? In case that's not given, give 2 points and 2 points only. If you give 1 point, you only get 1 mark, right? Do not give 3 points, because not only will the third point not be checked, the examiner is not going to go, oh, best 2 out of 3. No, they'll only check the first 2 points, right? And not the third. It will not be graded. And in general, right? So this is for all your papers where they ask you for a specific number of responses, whether it be the sciences or math or some commerce paper, I don't know. If you write more than the number of points they've asked you for, clearly, like, right, what I mean by number of points, over here, for example, they haven't, like, that it's 2 marks, one for each of these words in the phrase, but they haven't said, using your words, explain the right two words. So they haven't stated that, even though it's 1 mark for each. But when they've clearly said, give two things, do not give three, right? If the third one happens to, in some way, in any of your papers, so this is not specific to English, if it happens to contradict something you've written in point number 1 and 2, you lose those marks as well then, right? So just write the 2 points that you are most confident in, again, for all your papers, and of course over here as well. Secondly, since they've given bullet points, that makes it easier. If they haven't given bullet points, make sure that your 2 points are very clearly separated, either by a full stop, or you use the second line for the second point, right? Leave whatever space. So for example, if this bullet point wasn't here and you wrote the first point and it came till here, forget the space that's left, just use the next line for the second point. Okay, make it very clear what point number 1 and point number 2 is. You could even use numbering, right? You could number it yourself. Earlier, numbering and all of those things weren't uh, considered a good thing to do in this case, right? But if they're asking you for a certain number of points, then you number your points as saying, okay, point number 1 is this, point number 2 is that, making it very, very clear. And again, making it clear, if there are two things written in a single point, it will be considered as one. Okay, so for example, you answer over here as point number 1, I'm not taking something from the text, like you say A and B over here, and then for the second point, over here you write C, and A and B are correct and C is wrong. How many marks do you get? You get 1 mark. Why? Because A and B is taken as 1 point. It's considered as 1 point by the examiner. It's correct, you get 1 mark. C is supposed to be the second point, but it's wrong, so you don't get that mark. The examiner is not going to go, oh, well, they wrote C wrong, but in the first place they wrote the two things that were supposed to go, in second place. So yeah, so they're not going to make that consideration. So these are some technical aspects that you need to keep in mind when you are giving your response. Okay, and as far as space is concerned, for example, you write your answer over here and it's wrong, right? I mean, you later realize, oh, I wrote the answer wrong. What do I do? Just simply strike it out neatly. You don't need to scribble all over it. You see you've got space over here, right? You've got some space over here. You can write question 1, answer 1D, right? Draw some lines to make it neat. Write it out over here. There's going to be a margin on either side. There's going to be some barcode over here in your actual printed paper. Do not write in the margins. Do not write over the barcode, right? In fact, they're going to have a line saying, it's not given over here, but they're going to have a line saying do not write over here or something like that, right? So use the empty white space if you need extra space for your answer. If you cut it out, you cut it out over here, right? Or you can go to the blank pages. So do we have a blank page over here? Like you got extra space over here as well. And then here's the summary and blank page. You can utilize the blank page if you want to write more, for example, for some reason, or you cut out a previous answer. So just label it properly. The examiners will look at everything written on your paper, everything. Just don't write in the margins, don't write in the place where the barcode's given or the line is drawn and says do not write here or do not write below this line, because that area might not be scanned. And if it's not scanned, that answer won't appear on the paper, and so that's going to be problematic for you. Okay. So coming to question D. Again, from paragraph 3, give 2 things that the writer did to guard against the effects of the wind. Right, here's paragraph 3, just 4 lines. See what you can figure out. Let me know. Right, so do we have an answer?
Sir, I have.
Amarza, is that you? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your response to this question?
He secured his tent with the extra guy lines and he used his canoe to shield it from the wind.
Shield it? Shield what?
Tent.
Shield the tent from the wind. Okay. Afian's given a response in the chat. Secured the tent with extra guy lines, overturned the canoe by the tent. Okay. Haram, what about you? Do you have a response?
It's the same as them.
It's the same as them. Okay. So fastening the tent with extra guy lines. Okay. Uh, that is one valid response. And overturning his canoe, that is a second valid response. There's a third point, carried his canoe away from the water. So that's not something you guys chose, but that's fine. So in some cases, in some responses, there are like the examiner has more than 1 point for the answer, right? So in this case, there are 3 points given, and any of the two are valid, right? So you guys, right? Amarza, you said he used the canoe to shield himself. Now, where is that given? I made camp, taking extra guy lines. I carried my canoe, worn and battered, and overturned it. So it doesn't say here. Like how did you get? He used it to shield himself.
He did not shield himself, meaning
That she shields the
shield.
tent.
Yes.
It doesn't say here that he used the canoe to shield the tent. It just says he carried it. He carried it away from the shore, and or that might not be as clear. He overturned it besides the tent. He overturned it, so he put the canoe upside down. So, as you know, the shape of a canoe, like any boat, right? It's sort of like hemispherical, pointed, like conical, perhaps, right? The lower half that's actually in the water. So he overturned it so it doesn't blow away, it doesn't roll away with the wind when it blows, right? So you get 1 mark, right? And the other two get 2 marks for this, right? So just try and stick with what the text is giving you, particularly in explicit meaning questions, right? So just stick with the information the text is giving you. Okay. Explain what the writer was thinking when he whispered, just a little longer, my old friend. So that's the same paragraph, the last line. And this is an implicit meaning question. So right? You have to understand the atmosphere over here. You have to understand the atmosphere. You have to sort of understand perhaps the connection between the writer and the canoe and what's going on, and then why did he say these words, right? It's not like explain what the writer was thinking, so you just come up with some explanation, something random, something maybe fanciful, and give that. No, it needs to fit in contextually with what's going on in the text. So have a go and let me know. All right. Any thoughts? What was the writer thinking when he said this to the canoe? Anyone? All right. He was thinking about finishing the journey soon with his canoe. Hmm. That might work, but not quite. I mean, you're on. I'd say you're on the correct track, but not quite there. Amaraza?
He was imagining it as its friend as it had helped him.
Hmm. Now, I mean, that is correct because the text clearly says just a little longer, my old friend. But it's a bit more literary, right? I mean, this question could sort of very well have been part of question two. So, given the context and also, right, given knowing what the examiner is expecting, and that's exactly what we're going to try and train ourselves, right? Our approach to these questions. It says over here, then I carried up my canoe. Now here's the important part. Worn, battered, almost paper thin from months of grinding against the rocks and ice floes. So the canoe was in poor shape, right? And he had been using it for multiple months when he was traveling, in the Arctic waters, the icy waters. So with that in mind, right, the condition of the canoe and the length he had been using it for, and the situation he had been using it on, in saying just a little longer, my old friend, is sort of right, perhaps encouraging the canoe, right? This is what's right, sort of. I mean, not sort of, like, personification. So when you are treating inanimate objects, non-living objects, as people, as humans, right? Or even it also applies to animals when you attribute human qualities to animals or non-living objects. So the canoe is obviously inanimate, right? And so it's sort of a bit of encouragement that there's not a lot to go, right? Just a little more, and we'll make it out of this place. So on that note, Afine's response sort of fits. Again, she's close but not quite. Yours is sort of a rephrasing of what's given in the text. So again, kind of missing the mark. But this is just one approach, right? So the three approaches, the three different like thoughts that are acceptable over here is one, the writer is thinking that the canoe may not be able to make the journey. It won't last very long or much longer, right? That's why he's saying just a little longer because he knows it's in poor shape and it might not last for the remainder of the journey. The second is the encouragement thing that I just mentioned. And the third, they're saying he's sort of sympathizing with the canoe for going through this, icy waters and getting beaten up and being in poor shape. So there's a bit of like the writer is sympathetic towards the canoe. So there are actually three different thoughts that you know come in. Now, if you give something that fits but is not in the mark scheme when you're practicing, as I mentioned yesterday and right earlier on in our lessons, the examiner may consider it, may being the operative word, right? So it's totally up to the examiner. So as a teacher, I mean, if I really feel that something that should be allowed, I'll argue for it, right? I mean, over here, not for your Cambridge exams, but uh, again, right, to be on the cautious side, I'd say no, it's not in the mark scheme, so it's not acceptable. And on the reason is because I don't know what the examiner is going to do. Okay, next question. In paragraph 4, how did the writer feel about the weather conditions as he sat in his tent that evening? Give two details from the text to support your answer, right? So again, this is a mix of explicit and implicit. The writer's feelings are implicit. The details are obviously something we'll get from the text. And so, right, what we could do is find the details first that sort of tell us about how the writer's feeling, and then try to think of the feeling itself. All right, so let's go to paragraph 4. Right, how the writer feels about the weather conditions as he sat in his tent in the evening. So there's paragraph 4. Go ahead, take a read, and get those details and think of again the writer's feelings about the weather conditions. Right. Do we have something? Let's go with the details first. What details could you use over here from paragraph 4? Anyone?
The winds howling grow louder.
The winds howling grow. So listening to the winds howling grow louder. Okay, so that's one detail. What else?
I hid in my sleeping bag that night.
I hid in my sleeping bag that night. Right. So those are two details. Now, what feeling? Uh,
He was frightened for the upcoming storm.
okay. Now, right, your wording kind of gives a different impression, right? So he was frightened for the upcoming store. So, right, that's like saying I'm frightened for you, for example, right? So I'm not frightened for myself, but I'm frightened for you. So it would be more he was frightened because of or about the upcoming storm, right? Not for. Uh, okay. Afin, you said he was feeling vulnerable and the details of the first line and second last line, right? And so the first line, I believe you're saying the wind's howling, and the second last line is hunkering down for the night. If right, I if that's what you mean. So yes, right. one, like, some, so the feeling is something to do with, fearing for his safety. So being frightened, scared, intimidated, vulnerable might work. Again, vulnerable is not given as a possible response, but in this case I would say I'd allow it. Okay. And the details are exactly as you pointed out, right? The howling of the wind, and hiding or hunkering down in his sleeping bag. Good. G. It's explicit meaning question, straightforward. During the night, the writer realized that he might have a particular problem getting past the powerful river rapids. That's right. Line 21, that's where the powerful river rapids are mentioned. What was the problem, and what did he want to do to avoid the problem? So, what was the problem? Right, line 21, so that's paragraph 5. Powerful river rapids. Right, so first up, what was the problem? Right, have you identified the problem? For the previous question, the feelings that I mentioned are anything to do with expressing fearing for his own safety. So what this suggested is he was feeling scared, he was feeling intimidated, threatened, or worried. Right? So those are the four. Although they mention the mark scheme reward any feeling of fear, however expressed. Right? So they do allow for if you express that feeling of fear for safety in another way, and that's why I said I'd allow vulnerability. Now again, my saying that doesn't mean the examiner would allow it as well, right? But I feel that it should sit well given the context. All right, so what was the problem that he was going to face, or he was facing? Right, particular problem getting past the river rapids. Marza?
Many other people got stuck and did not got in trouble over there.
Hmm. Afin? Okay. Let me just take a look at it. During the night, the writer realized that he might have a particular problem getting past the powerful rapids. So he might have a problem getting past the rapids. Now, if you're saying that, right, other canoeists had gotten stuck, so that's not like other canoeists getting stuck is not a problem that he might face. So, what's the problem that he's thinking about he's going to face himself? So unlucky travelers had been known to get into trouble there in the rapids. Again, that's not a problem. If my journey was delayed, I'd have to navigate them late in the season when the weather was at its worst. That is the problem. The weather was going to get worse. Or, the problem would be, having to navigate them when the weather was at its worst. So the focus is on the weather being even worse than it is up till this point. You could choose to write about navigating them or not, but that's not the focus, right? And so talking about other people getting stuck, and that's not a problem that he's going to face. Now we could infer that the reason they got stuck is because it was difficult to navigate everything, but again, that's not the point, right? That's not the kind of question that's being asked. So that's the problem, right? The weather getting worse. Now What did he want to do to avoid the problem? Since you've read this, right? What would it be?
He hoped to escape by the morning.
Yes, Afin. Same. Yeah. So he planned on escaping or leaving, right, in the morning. So that would be the response. Now, this question, which students don't like as much, right? Question H, explain using your own words the writer's different feelings about the place where he had decided to make camp, and give three details from anywhere to in the text to support your answer. Now, before we answer this, I'm just going to peek at question 2 and see that the first question they're asking is from lines 35 and 36. So lines 35 and 36 come up in paragraph 7, right? And the previous question has asked us up to paragraph 5. So paragraph 6 is sort of untouched, right? So perhaps we can use this for question H, right? Maybe. But what question H is asking us, if to go over these paragraphs again, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at least, right? Uh, See if there's anything relevant in paragraph 6 that could be used. And again, try to figure out how the writer was feeling about the place where he had decided to make camp, right? So I believe in paragraph 6, he started moving forward. He's no longer at that place. So I doubt there's any relevant information over here, right? Or is it? A second night passed with me still stranded in the same spot. Now, you could possibly, right? So he's still there. And so paragraph 1 to 6, you have to read it again, get three details, and three feelings associated. So three different feelings. So I'm going to give you some time with that, and right, like 5 minutes, I guess, should be enough. It's a 3-mark question. Since you've already read it, keep in mind that generally the timing and weightage of Cambridge questions is 1 minute per mark. Right now, this question is 50. This paper is 50 marks. It's 2 hours long, so that's obviously more than twice. That's 120 minutes. And the reason for that, it requires reading and rereading and thinking and sort of analyzing the text and stuff like that. And so they've given you, right, more time for this. So I'm giving you 5 minutes, and right, go through that. I'll zoom out a bit so I can fit most of it, if not all of it, on screen. And yeah, I'll get back to you in 5. All right, what do we have? I believe that's 5 minutes. So you can share whatever feelings and supporting details you've been able to figure out in this time. Aram, do you have anything? All right, so the skies were gray and dismal, right? That is a detail. What feeling does that give you? right? What feeling does it, you know, portray about for the writer about that place? Okay, so Haram, you're saying the skies were gray and dismal. This indicates that the writer couldn't escape from there no time soon. You mean anytime soon? Now, my question to you is, how does the sky being gray and dismal uh, r- relate to being able to escape? Like, I think maybe perhaps your thought process is, oh, they were gray and dismal, so there's going to be windy and rainy weather, and it's going to be a storm, so it's going to be stuck. So there's a lot of, if that was your thought process, yeah. So you're saying yes, and so that's a lot of hidden, thinking on your part, which is not being communicated on paper, and so it won't, it won't work, because on face value, the skies being gray and dismal are not linking to the chance of escape. Okay, so you can try again. You can keep the same detail, but you can think of a feeling which sort of matches with that, or you could try something else. Right, Afin, you're saying feeling is grateful, and the detail is I was thankful to have found the spot. So yes, that is correct. That works. Uh, Hopeful as well. To me, just now it looked inviting. Where is that? Okay, so what kind of hopeful are we talking about over here? Uh, what was your first response? Thankful to have found the spot of grass. Okay, unfortunately, or no, it works, right? So, yeah, okay. Uh, right, so 2 out of 3, both of your feelings and uh, yeah, no. So the feeling of being hopeful and supporting detail, to me just now it looked inviting. That's correct. Feeling grateful, I was thankful to have found the spot. That also works. So that's 2 out of 3. We need one more. Amariza,
He was in despair.
the feeling of despair.
Yes,
Okay, and what's your supporting detail for that?
I watched as yet another day slipped away without any break,
Okay, that
ma-
might work.
making paddling impossible and trapping me.
So you just need one detail for one feeling. Okay, so right. Now, again, over here in the mark scheme, they clearly state they've given about one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight feelings with supporting texts. There are two things to note over here. First of all, the same detail from the text can be used to express a different feeling if you're able to, fit the two together properly. That's one point to note, right? So just because, like, if in class or somewhere you're discussing, you're like, oh, I wrote this feeling for this point, and someone else says no, for that point it's this feeling, both could be correct, possibly, right? Secondly, they very clearly mention credit alternate feelings and opinions about the place if they are clearly related to and based on the text. So it's not just the eight that are mentioned, they give allowance for something else. But not when the candidate relies on words from the text. Remember, this is an own words question, and the whole point of using your own words is rephrasing. So if you're going to take a detail from the text and you're going to use a word from the text to, tell the writer's feelings, you won't get that mark. So you need to rephrase, right? So for example, uh, it says somewhere over here, uh, right? Thankful for having found that spot. Uh, okay, for some reason I'm not able to locate that. Oh, there you are. So I was thankful to have found this spot among the rocks. Now, if I use this detail and I say, well, the writer was feeling thankful, I will not get the mark because the word thankful or any derivative, again, thankful, thankfulness, right? Or thanking, or any derivative of that word will not be credited. So I have to give, I have to rephrase it at least being thankful, like saying being grateful, right? Or something else to express the feeling. Okay. What do we have? Uh, right. Hopeful. You mentioned that he had hopes. Worried. I waited anxiously for a break in the wind. Now, the feeling worried does count, right? It is one that is given, and right, the supporting details. So you say, I waited anxiously for a break in the wind. And I believe that's mentioning to him trying to escape from there, right? So that might work. Yes. Right. There are other feelings that they've given. He's happy or hopeful. Like any of you want to try something else before I give you some of the responses in the mark scheme? Amariza, you've only given one. Aram, if you want to share something else for this question.
I had been faintly pressing in my canoe
Sorry, could you repeat that?
on like line number 4.
Line number 4. Let me get
The one
there.
I had been pressing.
The one I'd faintly tracing in my canoe. Right. So, uh, right. So, what feeling would you associate with this?
Like the feeling of finding something or anxiously or like in hurry.
Hmm. Now, the question is about the place where he decided to make camp, right? And this particular line is not about that, right?
Okay.
Right. Right. Uh, so, this particular text is just talking about the shore that he'd been following. And right after that, he says, I thought I spotted a tiny patch. So this one is close, but not at the point where he actually, finds that place to put up tent. So, I mean, unless you're really able to make it work, perhaps it won't be, considered for grading. Okay, Amarza, do you have anything before I share the responses from the mark scheme?
He was grateful.
Grateful. Okay, that is a feeling. What's your supporting detail?
Line number 10.
Line number 10. Uh, I made camp pegging down my tent securely with extra guy lines.
No, no, the above one.
When at last I came to the grass amid the rocks, thus, or this.
Consider the unattractive campsite. Just now it looked inviting.
Right, so that's line number 9. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, grateful can work over here. Right, he's grateful to have found some place to pitch tent, to stay or stop over. Okay, so possible feelings and the supporting texts that are suggested in the mark scheme. One is he felt happy or hopeful, and the supporting text is he spotted a patch of grass or looked inviting. So, right, that he was impressed or awed by the view, and over here they're quoting the gracefully sloped mountains and the emptiness of the landscape. Right? If you could give me sec. Right. Then you have, in fact, I'll just put it up on screen over here. So it's easier for you guys to follow along. So yeah, happy, grateful, relieved, or protected. So you can see any of these for either thankful to have found the spot, sheltered among the rocks, right? So you can see that there's quite a choice between the feeling and the detail that you can possibly make go with it. Worried, keen to leave, or impatient. Heard of canoes being windbound on such shores. Stuck for weeks, not encouraging, growing more anxious. Any of these. Vulnerable or frightened. My little tent as I lay huddled inside the wind. So this is sort of from one of the responses for an earlier question. Now I do believe I mentioned Cambridge doesn't really have an overlap in answers. In this case, right, the question is different, just sort of happens. Now, if you think, no, this is an overlap, it can't be, to be on the safe side, your thinking is correct because it shouldn't be, right? So you have all these other options. You could think of something else and completely skip this one. Like, no, I'm not using this one. This could be like a mistake. Because again, we don't know what the mark scheme has. We don't know what the examiner's, going to grade, like consider or not. So yeah, better to be safe. Hopeless, still stranded in the same spot, confined, or he can't escape. You can see again, still stranded in the same spot. So you've got different feelings for the same detail, as I mentioned. And he felt lonely, emptiness of the landscape, and again over here they clearly mention, right? This is not an exhaustive list. If if any candidate gives a valid feeling with a supporting detail that fits, that goes together, it will be credited. Just keep in mind, do not use the same word for the feeling as given in the text. Okay. Now, how about I give you some homework? Would you like that? Hmm? Yes or probably no? I'm going to give you a composition to write, right? Since we've got time coming up, so not the directed writing. I'll put this up on Google Classroom, right? These are the narrative and descriptive questions from paper 21, so that's paper 2 variant 1 for the June 2024 series. And you can choose to do any one of these, right? The word limit is 350 to 450. So we will be continuing with question 2 for the comprehension next time. I may or may not check this first before moving on to the summary and directed writing, but I'm just giving you something to keep you occupied, right? And so you can do that, submit it on Google Classroom, and then I will come back to it in our cycle of past paper questions. All right, any questions, anything to add or suggest or something?
No.
Okay, there's a question, can the feeling of hopeful and hopeless be used together in the same answer? How? Like, how would you do that? it depends, right, on what the question is and what the answer is. If you're talking about question H and you're saying, oh, right, one of my feelings of the three feelings is hopeless, and the other feeling I'm giving is hopeful. Yeah, so that's what you mean. And yes, you can, but again, right, so you need to give like they shouldn't be for the same detail, right? So the same detail is telling you that he's hopeful and hopeless, right? So if you have the appropriate supporting detail for those, then yes, you can very well. In fact, I do believe, right, he's hopeful over here and he's hopeless over here, as you can see in the mark scheme, right? It's just that the supporting detail is different. So yeah, it can very well work together. Anything else? No? All good? So I'll see you guys next time, inshallah. I'll post this work on Google Classrooms, so keep you guys busy. It's really up to you which one you want to do, just like in an actual exam. And yeah, do go through the planning and the rough draft and then make your corrections. And then what you submit to me for corrections should be what you consider to be a final draft. Okay? And see you next time.